Hey, what's going on, guys? Phil here with podcast 209. Today's guest is none other than NuttyRat. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I was gonna say we've been playing tag, if you will. This has been a game between me and you?
It has been it has been a bit of a challenge to slot in an appropriate time.
Right? You're a busy man. You're a busy man. But in all, actually, you
I
are
am.
actually busy.
Not gonna lie, yeah, it is pretty busy between work and streaming. There's not a lot of breathing space.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's go talk about that for a bit. What's life been like for you during COVID now? Has that changed
So
much?
so funny enough, I was already in like a transition of working from home full time anyways. So for me personally, it just accelerated the inevitable. Professionally, I work for an engineering firm, and we've got over 1,000 people in 3 countries. So we had to basically mobilize that entire workforce to work from home in 3 days.
No,
Once kind of all the all
yeah,
the everything comes out, and then it's just a matter of maintenance and
yeah,
support, and executing a 5-year plan in about 6 months,
gotcha.
that kind of stuff.
That's pretty condensed, but it's just a. So were you were going there anyways, and it just sped
Yeah,
things up?
yeah. For me personally, it's the type of work I do. I'm a service delivery manager, so a lot of what I do is it doesn't require my physical presence in an office. I manage staff, but all my staff are remote.
Gotcha.
Um, with the exception of one. I got one staff member that's here in Vancouver with me, but everybody else is remote anyways. So for me, I can work anywhere with an internet connection. So
Gotcha.
it makes it convenient to be able to work at home. I work at odd hours sometimes because I sometimes have to
Okay.
stay up super late to talk to the other side of the world. Sometimes I have to wake up at a ridiculous time in the morning because everyone back east wanting
Time
to have
zones.
meetings
Yeah.
first thing in the morning. It's
Yeah.
it's not fun,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's also fun.
Yeah. Working. I mean, obviously, me and Darren, and then with you guys, basically Vancouver people for Piranha Games. Like that was. It was always something like where it's like they're not even done wrapping up the day, and it's 8 o'clock here, and I'm like, wife time, it's like all that. So yeah, I can't. Yeah, I know what that's like. So, well, then it looks like it sort of played into the cards, if you will. So it's hasn't been too bad for you as far as the
No,
transition.
not too bad. I mean, I certainly miss being around the office and miss
Yeah,
seeing colleagues and everything like that. Being able to do face to face meetings that are physical face to face
yeah,
meetings as opposed to Teams meetings or Zoom meetings or whatever the remote flavor of a tool that you use.
gotcha,
Um, but it's made me more productive. It's helped me to kind of be like more focused at work and do a lot of really cool things. And it
gotcha.
makes it a lot easier, even just on the personal side of when I'm finished, I turn my laptop off, I shove it aside, and that's it.
And
I'm
you're done.
I'm done. I'm
Yeah,
home.
yeah. That's actually a really important part is like establishing that line between work and real life. And, I was obviously talking to Darren a lot since all this. And one of my concerns is with him, and it's something I've been stressing to him is like, hey, you need to set, if 8 o'clock in the morning or nine, whenever, and five comes or six, whatever, you need to be done. Like, because knowing him, and then obviously all the information that has been going on for the past 3 weeks, but just in general, is like if you don't make that separation, you're going to end up always working. And we've done that in the past, and it's not healthy. Two, you lose family time, and those things are really valuable for mental health and like just to be able to disconnect. And so yeah, do you feel like you said you were more productive?
Mhm.
Do you feel like that's a trend across the board? Because like I don't know who I heard it from, but they basically said IT and stuff is actually they're doing better because they're already used to the remoteness anyways, or I don't know. But like, are you guys gonna keep this permanently here, or are you guys ever gonna go back to the office, or is something like, yeah, this is saving us a lot of money, we're just as productive, so there's really no point.
Well, it's very hard to point at any business and say after all of this kind of after all the COVID stuff subsides, that it's going to be business as normal, like that it's going to go back to anything that kind of represents, pre-March.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, this has changed business forever. It really has. It changes the way that business operates. It changes the way that business executes a lot of the traditional kind of, not to get like too crazy into IT stuff, but like the traditional kind of file server relationship that people have VPN tunnels in through company firewalls. A lot of that goes away. This accelerates a lot of companies' movements to Azure, to Google Cloud, to AWS, to all those cloud services. And it then reduces the requirement for a physical office,
Yeah.
right? They become business centers, right? You have like a building with some shared desks and a couple meeting rooms and an admin contingent, and that's
you don't need
kind of
the
about it.
entire building. You just need a not like okay, yeah.
Exactly. Now, as far as what my company's doing, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I know from an IT perspective, like what helps to make us more productive in a circumstance like this is that we have fewer interruptions. So when you're working in IT, it doesn't matter what level of IT, you are doing some kind of client interface. You're doing some kind of client support, client services, service desk support. You're always going to have somebody coming up and tapping you on the shoulder to say, hey, can you come and look at this? Or can you help me with that? Or, hey, my computer at home is on the fritz. Can you give me some advice?
Have you turned it on or off again?
Yes. Hello, IT.
Yeah.
But that those kind of interruptions are gone. Or not gone. They're significantly reduced. Like the typical water cooler talk that you get if you're kind of going to stretch the legs, walk around the office, you stop and end up talking to somebody for a little bit. Next thing you realize it's an hour later. Ooh,
yeah,
kind of thing. A lot of that goes away. And if you're set up properly for working at home, then you can certainly focus more. But it's taking steps away from it is important too, like using like mindfulness apps like Headspace, getting just completely separating yourself. Like don't getting into the habit that I get into, which is I sit here and eat lunch while I'm working.
Yeah.
I have to force myself to go for a walk, to go and make lunch, go somewhere else other than sitting in this chair for as long as I do.
Yeah, because let's be honest, I mean, that and then transitioning into streaming on your free hours too. So you're going from sitting sedentary, like, man, I mean, I can't stress it, like during my streams, like whether we're doing like we haven't done one in like a week and a half because I've got this HTPC I'm waiting. Anyways, but just getting up, doing some burpees, just something just so your body, because like sitting there and, so let me ask you, that's awesome. I'm glad you're doing well. And I'm glad maybe it forced your hand a little bit early, but it seems like it's working out. So I guess that's great. Let me ask you, first off, because this is mainly a Battletech Mechwarrior podcast, let's be real. That's what we're all about. But I want to know a little bit more about you. Like, obviously you said you live up in Vancouver. You're not in Vancouver directly, right?
No, I'm kind of just outside of Vancouver. About like, I'll say about 30, 40 minutes away from
where it's affordable,
like, kind of downtown, where it's affordable. Yeah.
Maybe,
because trust me, saying affordable here, that you got to go east. It's so expensive here.
God, we were talking about it in stream chat. Someone mentioned they had to have a $200,000 down payment, and I was like, what? They're like, yeah, you gotta have like 20% down. I was like, okay, that makes sense. This person was in New Zealand and just where they were at, and this reminded me so much of Vancouver. And it was like, yeah, like that's 20%, and I'm like, that's like how much a house costs here. like it's ridiculous. I don't know. It's just, but okay. So you live outside of Vancouver. How long have you been a Battletech Mechwarrior fan? And how did you get into that? Because I don't think I've ever asked you.
Yeah, so I started playing Mechwarrior 3050 for Super Nintendo back when it was new. Now, here's the thing. I've never played tabletop.
Okay.
It's always been on the Mechwarrior side, and HPS BattleTech when it came out as well.
Sure.
But when I played 3050 for Super Nintendo, I didn't connect to it. It was like, okay, it's a mech game, it's fun, it's cool, it's Super Nintendo. I was like 12.
Yeah,
I think it was like 92 when it came out. It wasn't until Mechwarrior 2 that I really started to connect with the franchise. I didn't have a computer powerful enough myself. At that point, I didn't have a Windows PC. I had basic stuff based on Basic. But a friend of mine had a decent computer, and he had MechWarrior, and we would actually play it in tandem. So we would
Okay.
have one person on the joystick and one person on the keyboard.
Okay.
So we'd have the pilot, we'd have a navigator, we would call
Gotcha.
everything. We'd run through the campaign in MechWarrior 2 so many times.
Yeah.
that
Sounds like me. Yeah. Yeah.
You just don't really think about it, because it's more you're having fun with your
Sure.
friends. You're doing that kind of tandem play. You're also kicking back and watching, and
Yeah.
everyone's taking turns. It was a neat intro to the series, and then it just kind of gravitated with
Gotcha.
me. I went to Mech 2 Mercenaries, and had an absolute blast with that. The line of the intro at the end.
Yeah.
Look at the bright side, kid. You get to keep all the money. I love that.
Yeah, so great. You know what? I wanted them to do a homage for Mech 5 with that intro. Like, it would have been so good, even if it had been slightly different. But they would have ended with like that line or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, that would have worked perfectly.
Yeah. So Mech 2 Mercenary. Did you play Mech Commander or Mech 3 or any of those?
So I mean, I played all the Mech titles from
Okay.
3050 all the way
Okay.
all the way up to Mech 5.
Okay.
On the Mech Commander side, I briefly played the first one. I played the second one a lot more heavily, I think.
Okay.
But still kind of, I liked more the first person aspect, right?
Gotcha.
So I had fun piloting the mech more than I had fun, telling them to go here, go there.
Yeah.
And I played a lot of online with with Mech 4, Mech 4 Mercenaries.
Sure.
And then transition away from MechWarrior to do Counter-Strike, which I played competitively, which at that stage it was a bit of a different thing to say that you played competitive Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
And then I briefly came back when I didn't know that MechWarrior Online was a thing.
Yeah.
Until I started playing. I think it was about a month before Sarah's Jenner was.
Okay, so it'd been going for a little bit. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I started playing around then, and then Sarah's Jenner came out, and I saw that. I'm like, okay, oh my goodness, I have to buy it, even though I didn't really have the means for it. But I'm like, you know what, I have to.
Yeah.
And that was like, so Sarah's Jenner is my very first mech purchase in the game, which I'm pretty stoked about.
That's good. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I kind of put it aside, because I was like, I was my career was kind of budding. I was I had a pretty busy social life at the time. And I came back just after MechCon 2016.
Okay.
So I didn't know that MechCon was really a thing, but what had happened is I stopped playing Dota, because I started playing Dota for I've got around as many hours in Dota that I do in MechWarrior Online, just to give you an idea for scale. So significant, like I'm 3,600 hours or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So then I decided to come back to playing MechWarrior, and I felt like something was different, like something was missing. And it's like, you know what? I should stream this. Because that was, streaming was still kind of finding its footing, so to speak. It was before the Twitch affiliate program and all that kind of stuff. So I started kind of streaming from there. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stream this all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember Darren came up to me. This is like the first MechCon, and he's like, where did you come from? Because all of a sudden you guys saw me everywhere, which was I guess it had the desired result.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we definitely paid attention to people that would pop in, and then do we see them again after a week, after two, and then you're like, okay, this guy's committed, right? Like, it's like you'd have occasional people would pop in, they would disappear. It just happens or whatever. But Darren definitely would reach out and sit in chats. A lot of times people didn't know. And then after, he'd reach out to the individuals and be like, hey, here's some codes, giveaways. You can do, what you want and so forth. But, okay. So how old are you?
I'm 40.
Okay. So you would have been, we probably played, if you played Mech 3 online or Mech 4, we probably played against each other, like back in the day with the MSN Zone and all the leagues from ODL, SL, NBT. I mean, I was involved back then too. I was just obviously a few years younger than you, but yeah, very similar. I actually got involved. I bought MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries, and I didn't realize I didn't have a computer. Like, it was before Windows 95, whatever that was, like Windows anyways. So like, total disheartened, 13-year-old buys a game, gets home, goes to
Oh
install it,
no.
and I have Windows 95. So my mom was a baller, and she went out and like put a Pentium 166 on her credit card and bought a computer for me. So I can't really. That's awesome, Mom. But yeah. So, and then I didn't know about Mech 2, the original. I thought Mechwarrior 2, like, because I got involved with multiplayer battle tech on AOL. And then I ran up like a $300 bill. Didn't realize like you paid when you played the game. It charged your account. And then someone was like, "Hey, are you playing MechWarrior?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is what I'm playing right now." They're like, "No, MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries." And this is what, 1990. I don't even know when, 5, 7, whenever it was. So the internet really wasn't the same. So, anyways, drove all the way down to like, I think it was Circuit City in Colorado Springs. That was like when it was the big thing, or I think it was Radio Shack. It was like Radio Shack was like the equivalent to like Best Buy nowadays, right? And yeah, so, but yeah, man. So you sort of rolled right into the other topic, which is streaming, and that's where I know you from. You've been a streamer for Mechwarrior Online for years now. What got you? I mean, like you said, you just decided. Was it just because you saw others doing it, you thought it was fun, or you just what enticed you to go down that road?
So I actually started streaming 6 months before I started playing Mechwarrior Online with any kind of seriousness. But I was streaming Dota 2, which if you've ever looked at the number of streams on Dota 2 on Twitch, it's a very large number, which puts me at the bottom of a very long list of of streamers.
Yeah.
But there was like I didn't really have any idea what I was doing.
Sure.
I turned on the camera, I had my computer, I just played the game and played with my friends, and
Sure.
and occasionally someone would come in, call me a noob and leave, which welcome to the Dota community.
Yeah.
But the whole what attracted me to streaming was really I kind of think back to the way that video gaming was in the 80s and early 90s, right? When you when you had a Nintendo, or if you go back even further with Atari 2600 or Commodore 64, or any of those gaming consoles that are out there, you might be the only kid on the block that has one of those gaming consoles, because they weren't cheap.
Yeah.
And so you'd have like, the neighborhood kids over, they'd all be sitting on the couch, you'd be passing the controllers back and forth. And my brother, he used to watch me play video games quite a bit. He actually took a lot of enjoyment out of it, which puzzled me at the time. I was like, what? You like sitting here watching this stuff? I don't get it. And it wasn't until I kind of put kind of the experience from the 80s, my experience playing Mechwarrior with my friends in the early 90s, and then seeing people coming up on, seeing this Twitch thing and going, oh wow, okay, there's actually something here. This is interesting, and interacting with some streams and just watching them, and then I was like, okay, I kind of see what's going on. So that was kind of my motivation to do it. Well, one of my motivations. The other one is, I'm playing video games. I want to maybe see about making something of it.
Sure.
Sharing my love and passion for video games, for technology, all of those kinds of things. You know what? And it's like streaming is a good way to do it. I'm an introvert in real life, so even being able to have some kind of interaction with people, this was like the perfect medium.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how many people are watching me. I'm still sitting in my living room, or now I've got a dedicated streaming space, but in my living room, I can turn things off and walk away if things got too much stimulus or anything like that. And, and that actually never really happened.
Yeah. You're not the first one, obviously, to say that. From the like introvert, obviously I've talked to a lot. I think, to be honest, I think the majority of streamers out there, it's a way for them to get over a way to maybe meet head first their social anxiety, and then also sometimes I think the depression aspect, but then be able to, they're doing it on their terms, and it's not person to person. It's a one-way thing when you're streaming, right? I mean, you're here and you've got chat, but it's a very safe place to be able to do that. you know, for the most part, as far as chat's concerned. But
Yeah.
like the settings there, and I think it's helped out a lot of people through streaming that have had and do deal with that. And
Mhm.
it's definitely, I want to say an escape, but I would say it's more of a it's a new media to be able to do it with. And yeah, 100%. Like I just like looking at like myself, I don't remember how I started streaming or why I started streaming. I just,
Mhm.
but I remember it was a funny moment. We were on vacation with my in-laws and we had some friends, the family, and we were staying with them down at the beach, and they were playing Nintendo Switch, but they had it connected to the TV. And so you had me sitting there watching them, her, you know, their parents watching, and then my in-laws watching, and everybody's just joking and they're playing Zelda and blah blah blah. And I looked over to my mother-in-law and I was like, this is what I do on a daily basis. And she was like, huh. You know, because she didn't really understand it, right? The idea of like what
Mhm.
streaming is, why would you tune in? It's like, well, it's just basically it's the same idea, same concept, just a different setting. Whether it's someone sitting at home on their computer playing a game or they're at work. A lot of people watch when they're at work and stuff like that, but it's a social aspect, right?
And it's also the ability to provide some entertainment, right? So you take what I said about gaming and the fact that I'm an introvert and all that kind of stuff. So now this is going to sound, it's something diametrically opposed, is that I grew up around musical instruments. So I played piano when I was young, went to trombone and classical guitar and standard, and then going into DJing and then being a kind of a festival slash party DJ for 10 years. So not only does gaming provide that, or streaming rather provide that social aspect, but it also provides that, or it also kind of satisfies that itch to provide entertainment, to
Sure.
provide enjoyment and value and fun and something that you can kind of bring to people. And it's actually kind of satisfying when people come in and they say that they've been a long time viewer,
Yep.
and they really enjoy showing up, and they think it's great. I get kind of over the moon when I hear things like that, because it means it's like, hey, not only am I satisfying kind of my own my own requirements, but I'm also providing value to the people that watch,
Yeah.
and that's fantastic.
Yeah. 100%. Like it validates to like all the work and effort, because it is work. Funny enough, my wife, we did a
It's a lot of
yeah,
work.
it's a lot of work. My wife, we did a stream over the weekend where I was doing the building her home theater PC. She had a few beers, so she didn't feel comfortable. So she just narrated here on camera. It was a 4-hour stream, and she said that was exhausting. How do you do that? Play a game, interact with chat, focus on game. Like, how do you? And I was like, what? You know, it was cool because she was like, I have a newfound appreciation for what you do. She's like, I'm sure it'd be easier if I did it again, but like, mother of God, like it's just sensory overload. And it's like, yeah, it takes time to pick up that. I mean, definitely as a streamer. So, um, that's awesome. I mean, like I said, so you've been involved pretty much Mechwarrior BattleTech. You've never played but the tabletop. You know what's interesting? You're not the only one out there. You know, it's such. I don't play tabletop games. I don't have a group to do that with. Like, at least not. I just don't have it. I have some stuff over there. I could do that, but it's not. I don't know. Like I think that's one of the toughest things at the tabletop, like Warhammer and BattleTech. I think that's the biggest thing, is like, how do you create a rule set that's easy? I mean, and they did that, right, with the Alpha Strike rules, to be able to maybe play games a little bit quicker, or bigger battles quicker, or even the smaller stuff quicker. I feel like time and effort, especially when you look at the tabletop, because it can take quite a long time. And if you don't
Mhm.
have like a game master that knows like all the rules, then you have to like sit there and read the rule book at the same time. So I'm not saying you're not, I definitely think you should experience it. It is fun, especially if like you have some beers. But yeah.
Well, come on, I keep a pewter Hellbringer
Oh, there you go.
at my desk at all times.
Yeah.
So it's
Speak.
and I did back. I
Oh,
did
I was
I did
gonna.
back
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
plan Kickstarter. So
Yeah. Yeah. Did you get your email yet, or did you get?
I got the email. Yes, I reopened. Yes, I added
Oh,
more.
you added more. Oh, okay.
I added more.
Okay.
I had to get another cleansed heavy striker pack
Okay.
because it has the Hellbringer in it, and
Gotcha.
I have a Hellbringer or two in my MWO mech bay.
Gotcha. Do you paint the minis? Like, is that?
I want to,
Yeah.
because I played like D&D in
Sure.
my teens, and you're talking about having somebody that knows the rules. Imagine being in a room where you have somebody that has one bookshelf full of
Oh,
like D&D manuals and character manuals and all that kind of stuff, and somebody decides to call a rule violation, and you end up spending the rest of the day digging through all the books. Let me just say some kind of house rules came out of that. Of if you
gotcha.
can't if you can't identify it in 5 minutes, then
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not going to
No.
happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I kind of painted D&D miniatures rather terribly. Funny enough, my dad is a big fan of painting miniatures. He does like soldiers from the Neapolitan era, Napoleon stuff,
Sure.
and kind of around that era. And he is insanely good at it.
Yeah. I was gonna say I
I
watch
kind of
Loken. I watch Loken paint all the time, and yeah, I'm jealous because like you'll see someone post up like pictures of theirs, and you're like, like, oh, it looks like a 5-year-old did that, and then you'll see someone else who did it, and it's like that that it's like a professional did that. Anyways, I would be the
yeah.
5-year-old version, I suspect. So
And
maybe
you think, oh, this looks easy. So you pick up some paints and pick
no,
up some brushes, and you sit down and you go, oh,
I don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to. I don't. Yeah, how much do you charge? Okay. But
yeah.
okay. So, as far as did you read any of the novels? Did you get into any of the lore?
I've started to read some of the novels. Certainly read the Grey Death
Okay.
trilogy.
Okay.
To
So
really
you
kind
have
of.
some appreciation for that. Okay.
Oh, for sure, for
Good.
sure. It's finding the time to read it, and also trying to. As much as I love having physical books, I love that. I also hate having physical books because they take up so much physical space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just I'm trying to find digital versions that I can
Gotcha.
buy and then read them, and I just haven't really had much time
I love the smell of
to read
books.
them.
I don't.
Oh,
Yeah, I like having books. Like, I know Pardo just came out with a new BattleTech book, and there you can download it digitally. I need to reach out to him, do a podcast. That would be great. But the print on demand from Amazon, and I'm like, yeah, I'd do that because I just like physically having them as a collection. So, okay. So let me ask you a very important questions. You had to choose, would you defend the inner sphere or would you be a clanner?
well, I love my Hellbringers too much, so
Oh, man.
it's clanners all the way.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I'll say I'm more of a mercenary than anything. But if
oh,
I had to choose sides,
clanners
then
hate mercenaries, so just
yeah,
saying. Maybe you captured it. I don't know, man. See, I'm on the,
maybe.
it's weird. So I read the novels early on too. Like, so I was very, I don't know, when you're a young kid, you like, obviously you're impressionable, but like the idea of like the warrior caste system, the pinnacle, the elite of the elite, right? That's like when you read about the clans and all that, there's something, the allure is there. But then as I've gotten older and I've reread the books and really like that's exactly opposite of what, like, because of what they stand for, right? Too. So like,
Mhm.
so now I'd be like, if I was that, I think I would be more like akin to like Phelan Kell and the Wolven Exiles, where you're actually a clanner, but you're defending in the inner sphere against the clans. I don't know. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. So all right.
Well,
So
it's kind of more of like kind of a romantic story, you could say,
sure.
on the inner sphere side, from everything that I've read, right?
Yeah.
Because it's more about picking yourself up by your bootstraps. You're
Sure.
you're encountering kind of uh, odds that are stacked against you. All those, it's as far as like all the books that I've read, that I have read that involved the clan, which there was a couple.
Yeah.
It's kind of you're staring down the barrel of a bigger gun, but you have to outthink them in order to win. I mean, there's a lot of interest in the kind of the inner sphere side of the story, which is why I really want to read more of the books.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, they're good. I should say some of them are, I mean, it's not like high reading. It's not like Moby Dick or whatever, but like, I think they're good. I mean, especially I look forward to like when I have kids and I can be like, hey, your dad's a big nerd. You should read these, novels too. And anyways, but
yep.
All right. So
I enjoy novel series that really capture the imagination. Like there's like the Richard Sharp novel series.
Yeah.
I've read those like so many times, like from like childhood.
Gotcha.
But it's like it's the adventure aspect that really attracts me. And I think the BattleTech books probably have that, which is especially the Grey Death, like the Grey Death set is very much felt like that.
Yeah, and it's such a wide scope of like novels as well. So like you have your sort of intimate small engagements and small merc stuff and stories and like all that, all the way up to where you'll have like these battles of like you can't even like fathom it because it's like such a massive scale, right? And then on the complete opposite, you'll have some like covert ops desk teams being dropped behind enemy lines. It's a really cool thing. I mean, I love it just for the fact of it really sets the tone. I think this is a good like sort of segue as far as like tone and capturing that into. You've been playing Mechwarrior Online. You were part of by the way, I've listened to the community, the competitive community. It's a podcast. I don't know why you guys just Ash, get with it. Just call it a podcast. Like, just stop being coy. It's a podcast. All right, it's okay. You can join the club. It's cool. All right, do it.
I think that was Bear Claw's fault. In
He's
all
young.
fairness.
You can't listen to him. He doesn't. It's been cool. Like, it's tough because like on one hand, like getting to know everybody throughout the streaming community. And like, and that's why I wanted to have this and pick your brain and like, get to know you and someone who's listening out there, get to know you. Obviously, you were on the competitive community podcast. Let's just call it that. You guys talked about a multitude of things. I also have the PDF. I'll have all this linked down below for those, and I'll also link to the video if you haven't watched it. But you guys were coming at the discussion of Mechwarrior Online. Before we dive into that, I want to get your first. Obviously, you listened to podcast 204. I think a lot of people did. Did you have initial reactions?
That was the one with Russ, right?
Yeah.
One with
yeah.
So I kind of internally jumped for joy a little bit when just at the face of it, when you hear that Piranha Games is willing to start developing a Mechwarrior Online again. Felt really happy to hear that. I kind of had a feeling it would make a lot of sense just because they do have the IP renewal, they have the game already here. It's good to hear that they're wanting to do stuff with it again. So on certainly it's like the elation was there of we're gonna hopefully get something that's meaningful to the community. And then, of course, I started to kind of, panic a little bit internally. It's like, okay, well, what is this going to look like? Where is the focus going to be? Is it going to align? Is the community going to be receptive? Is PGI going to be receptive to, some of the community proposals? And when I think of that podcast, and I think, and if I go back a year to when Mechwarrior 5 came out, I kind of saw a bit of a different PGI in a way, because now they're developing a game that embraces modding, which means that they're embracing kind of community community contributions to the game, and it's more sky's the limit versus a bit more of a walled garden for MWO because it's a client server type service. And I felt that the communication was very different, and in a positive way, because it was way more collaborative. When we had the PSR discussion over the summer, that for me was the idea that, hey, we're really moving in the right direction as far as, kind of the community's relationship. And then, bringing Darren back, I certainly got all excited. I had messaged Matt like right, pretty much right away, going, "You held this from me." Well,
Yeah.
not that I really know anything, but he was kind of teasing me. I'll just wait till you see what happens on Friday. He jumped in my stream to say that.
Yeah.
So I was certainly excited. I tempered my expectation a little bit because we didn't really understand, and we still don't quite yet understand what that the community involvement means.
Sure.
So, I'm when you think of the 3 hour stream that we had, I don't know what they're going to adopt from that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's good that we get it out there and get people talking about it, which I think is the most important one. And then we can see what kind of consensus we can build.
Sure. I mean, and that PDF, I didn't see anything crazy on it. I mean, it pretty much aligned with stuff that me and Mike had talked about, me and Tori had talked about, multiple people on stream have talked about, and I wanted to sort of dive in to some of those things. You said you were anxious on one hand. I don't know about you, but like I think this is why so many people, are hesitant to jump on board yeah, let's do it. Like, this is awesome, because the reality of it is it has been 2+ years. 2 years. Okay, we could say 2 years. It has been 2 years. And then on top of that, like Solaris, skill tree, the things that like a lot of the things that you guys brought up have been and, accumulated over the past 5 years. And so like, I totally understand someone out there who's like, I'll believe it when I see it. And me and you have talked a lot about like being streamers. And for me, I don't like being negative. I don't surround myself with negativity. I don't surround myself with negative people. I just feel like that just doesn't work for me. And I know me and you have talked a lot about that, because it can be sometimes frustrating as a streamer where not that you're trying to be positive, or I don't know how to say this, but you just have someone just come in to chat and just like, regardless of what you do, it's just like shitting all over like anything. They can't even see any positive light. And I feel like that's been a tough thing for me in the past. I would say 2 years. What was really tough was when we did do contract work for them, having someone come in and it was like just this constant barrage of like, how have you been handling chat since this news came out? Have you seen a positive uptick? Have you seen the same old sort of like, again, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, what's it been like for you as a streamer since the news came out?
Well, I mean, I think most people who know who I am know, as far as like my stance on constructive versus kind of, for lack of better terms, toxic feedback, right? In that, if somebody wants to be angry at the game and angry at the developer and just be angry, that's fine. I've got no issues with that. It's when when people, well, not you particularly, but just when the royal you, when somebody is being a little bit more vocal, but in the midst of all this vitriol, you get like a really good piece of feedback in there. It's like, oh, if you just didn't have the first part in there, then this feedback would be perfect and constructive, and maybe they can do something with it. As far as my stream goes, I think most people, like the most people that have come by have been, at worst, they're more of the I'll believe it when I see it camp.
Yeah.
Not so much the I don't believe them or anything like that, but I'll believe it when I believe when I see it. There's still a lot of people that haven't heard the news. So
Sure.
like if you're on Reddit, and sometimes they're going to turn the servers off tomorrow. It's like, did you not see the announcement and the podcast?
Yeah, it's like, bro, did you listen to that pod? Yeah, it's like I've seen that a few times. Like, does he not know? These, are they? But you can't blame someone, right? Like, again, if they've disappeared from the game and they don't, there's they're not relying on social media. They're not relying on, so,
But I mean, like I said, the feedback and conversation has been generally Generally good. I haven't, just because of work commitments, I haven't actually had a chance to stream too much since my since the stream on the weekend,
Sure.
the community podcast. So really, like that, like kind of the post discussion there is the one that's very, very interesting, because now we've kind of, the cards are out on the table, right? These are the kind of things that we're hoping to be able to get community backing, and pass that off to Piranha Games, and hopefully they'll see the stream and the chat and a lot of the good feedback that we had on that. But yeah, it's I'm slightly losing my train of thought
No,
here.
you're
But
fine.
no,
So
it's been.
no, I was
Sorry, go
gonna
ahead.
say, so the podcast in general, like I said, I don't think it was nice that it was organized the way it was. There was a few things that, like, 100% agree. There's a lot of low hanging fruit that I think is just quality of life issues, which is sort of what they're going at as well. And it's going to be interesting how Darren and Matt sort of basically, I mean, I don't envy any of those guys right now, the amount of like just information overload, but
Rip
I
Darren's inbox. That's all I have to say.
yeah, like I have seen this constant, like outside of like grandiose ideas for faction play or grandiose ideas for like, some feature of X, Y, and Z, or hey, you should do this with balance. To me, that's cool. I have no input really on numbers. I'm not a spreadsheet guy. Like as far as like weapon mounts, I feel like that's like in the weeds. Like you're like really in there. But facilitating the talk about the big stuff, and you guys did a really good job with that. I mean, from the quality of life skill tree, I think something I wanted to sort of ask you too is like, you guys didn't dive into it much because it 100% agree. You need to know what PGI is also thinking first, because because it is a big deal. And I 100%, I think it's a great idea that you guys basically said is, hey, skill tree needs to be fixed, but how it gets fixed really depends on PGI, because you can't, like Mike was saying, just revert back to the old system. Well, then you're dealing with, when we adopted the new system, having to give everybody their skill points back in a certain way. Like, how does that work? The master, like all that, blah, blah, blah. So we really need that communication with Darren and Matt first before they're like, yes, we're going to commit to this, or hey, maybe our time is better served a different route. So like that, I think that's a lot of, sometimes people just don't forget. And even, when Mike talked about it, that wasn't brought up. It's like, there is a bigger discussion too, is like the involvement for the community of like, now you're gonna have to re-click all those other things, right? Like even if it's like less, like even if you're talking about like 9 clicks, it's still 9 times potentially 600 mechs or whatever. Or like, how does that system work? So I like that you guys brought that up. If you could, would you get rid of skill tree in its current form? Do you think the current skill, let me rephrase this. Do you think the current skill tree is a net positive or net negative to MWO currently?
So I think the skill tree is a step in the right direction from the old system of getting a little bit more kind of granular customization of your mech and the role that it plays. But if I remember correctly, from back when skill tree was launched, it wasn't like there wasn't an iterative change, right? It was, the skill tree was launched, and I think like 1 or 2 nodes might have gotten changed or moved slightly. I think that's about the limit. And then they
Sure.
said, there we go, that's it.
Yeah.
And I think that for them to release the skill tree as it was when they released it, and then if they, 3 months or so down the line, made some adjustments based on community feedback, I think that would have been better, right? In hindsight, right, we can easily say that it would have been better for them to have made adjustments to it.
Sure.
My opinions on the skill tree have changed over the years, because when I really started to play the game with beyond just joking around on stream, was after the skill tree was announced. So for me, I didn't have the same struggles that some of the more experienced players have had. But I can also understand exactly where they're coming from around having to click nodes that make absolutely no sense to get to the things that you want, especially like in the sensor tree and the operations trees. And having it take so long. It wasn't until I really saw the math
Yeah.
around how long it takes the average player to skill out one mech. And then, because I only, when a new mech pack, when they were being released, I would always buy an ultimate pack, times that by 5, 6,
7,
7
8.
mechs.
Yeah. It's quite crazy. Yeah.
I really understood where everybody was coming from at that point. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like, it needs to be reduced. There's like, I know there's a few kind of ideas that are out there that are pretty interesting. I haven't dove into them in a lot of detail quite yet. I'm trying not to get married too much to, micro changes to any of these things, because, I'm trying to keep my own expectations tempered and then focus when Piranha Games says, hey, let's do this and then work on it.
Yeah, and we still have a lot of ideas. I mean, I remember Solima had done that mock-up back in the day. I think the problem is, how do they want to handle it? Do they want to... Because I think the bones are fine. It's just obviously fixing some of that grind and fixing... Also from the new player experience, too. Like, it is not... I mean, you could be like, oh, well, look at Path of Exile. But I guarantee Path of Exile has a better system at introducing you as a newer player to that system. And then on top of that, the grind did exponentially increase. Like, I get the whole, they broke away from the, you have to have 3 of a kind sort of thing to this system. Okay. So like you've sort of changed. So you'd say, would you remain neutral on it? You don't hate it, but you don't love it.
I'm
ambivalent.
I'll say I'm kind of more neutral on it. I mean, I've dealt with the aspect of learning what the skill tree is, what the nodes do. I have like 5 or 6 different skill tree patterns that I pretty much use across all my mechs.
So okay, you just brought that up, and I brought this up on stream. I feel like it's actually, there is no choice. I feel like it's a fallacy. Like, and what I mean by this is, if you have a laser vomit, you do the exact same thing, no matter if you have a missile, missile and energy, you go missile and ballistic, you go the same, like, and that's where I feel like the whole idea of like choice, like you get to choose. You mentioned that at the very beginning. I don't think that's like, when you actually look at it as objectively, like min-maxing, like what are the best nodes for using those 91 points, I don't think there's a lot of difference between the builds. If you talk like just talk about like the top, like let's just use them as a template as far as like the best choice for killing your enemies with, or whatever, or utilizing those nodes. And that's where I feel like the system sort of fell flat. It's like this, you get to quirk this or that. But I mean, again, from a new player's experience, I just started a new account when I was playing on NGTV. It takes 4.3 million to unlock 91 nodes. And that's if you know what you're doing too. That's another thing too, is like the new players like can get hammered when they get in there because they have no idea what they're doing. They're like, oh yeah, I'll invest in the jump jet tree, or, oh yes, I'll invest in, a little bit of mobility here. Oh, fire, but they don't know or whatever. So, okay,
yeah,
so
when you consider the new player experience for skill tree, right? Any new player experience that's in the game currently was created well before the skill tree.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't really talk about the skill tree at all.
And then
same thing too with the Mech Lab, right? The Mech Lab is another one that's a complete black hole for new players, because they're like, what are all these weapons?
Yeah.
What are all these hard points? What makes sense?
It's not even like the new players. And you guys brought this up, and I know the community has said it, that if you're going to keep this system, that the trial mechs need to have skill trees as themselves. If anything, just for a visual, like, okay, this is a laser vomit mech. Okay, I see what they're doing, like on this, or just to set them for success, because like having, I think right now there's 3 trial mechs that have ECM, but they're not optimal, and then plus the builds are old. And I was talking to Darren about this. Like, I honestly think, like, if you just ask Jay-Z, just like he did in the past, hey Jay-Z, every quarter, can you just give me a new list? he would happily bend backwards to do it. He'd be like, oh, heck yeah. Like, he's the nicest guy ever. And he wants new players to succeed. So, like, I feel like I agree with you. I think there's positive. It will be interesting sort of seeing. I don't want to go through this entire doc. I just want to talk to you.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, I wanted to, because there was a few things that I wanted to pick your brain about because I'm not really sold on some of these ideas. I will say this. I think torso heat spike. Yeah, I don't think there's anybody arguing this. 8v8. Let's talk. Sell me on it because I'm not sold, man. During the stream, I don't know, and I don't think any of you do. So this is just an opinion and or a theory that it would stop Potato Land and Rotato Land. I don't think it would stop NASCAR. Like, and would it improve matches? And why is, like, sell me on the thing, because again, I've talked to a lot of people about it. Why is this? I can understand it from Jay's perspective as far as matchmaking. I can understand that because that's analytical, right? Like, okay, you're taking 12 per team going down 8. That's going to leave, like stuff like that. But sell me, why are you in favor of 8v8 and why?
So I am. And if you rewind to before the queues were combined, there was a 2-week test that was dropped on us at the very last minute. When I say very last minute, it was on a Friday. I know because that's, of course, it was like about an hour before my Friday stream where Paul announced that, oh, by the way, Group Q is now 8v8. Yeah. And we're gonna run with this for a while. Completely out of the blue. Nobody had any idea it was coming. And we had some of the best matches in 8v8 Group Q. Because we were able to take a full group, which was great, especially because my Friday night streams are usually all about the community. So we have people of all skill levels and we all just, group up and have fun. We got absolutely stomped sometimes, but the everything about the gameplay felt different. NASCAR didn't happen anywhere near as much. We were taking different positions, different mechs, different firing lines. The communication was different. It was perhaps a bit nerve-wracking for people that never really played the game in 8v8 in a queue setting like that. And the feedback that I read on my stream, in a few of the Discords that I'm in, kind of on the casual side and on the competitive side, is it was a resounding success. And you could go into the group queue at almost any time during that 2-week stretch, and whether you had an even group or an odd group, and you could find a match, and the matches were generally fun. They were challenging. Sometimes they were one-sided. Again, there's no PSR matchmaker in group queue, right? So we have our expectations tempered from there, but the enjoyment was really there, and people were really interested in coming back because of the renewed interest. But of course, it only lasted for 2 weeks, and then it turned into the combined queue.
Okay.
Now, where where that 8v8 discussion went to is something that actually Paul had said that they can't do, and that's 8v8 with solo opt-in to fill in the blanks if, say, there's only kind of like odd number groups or something like that in the queue. You probably saw when I polled the audience and said, "Hey, everyone, hit this," and
that would have probably been biased, though, if we're honest here.
Yeah, yeah, because it's the platform that we were on. We were on the MW League's stream, so certainly there is more of a competitive audience. Again, I'm half of one, half of the other. And I certainly enjoyed it. It'd be great to be able to drop with more people again. So as far, go ahead.
No, go. I was gonna say, okay, so from a matchmaking standpoint, it would potentially help. From a gameplay perspective, I would like to, I guess moving forward, it's like I would still want to be sold on it because, like, I did play. The matches were there. I would maybe push back on, it's interesting because on one hand, you're acknowledging that groups have a huge impact on the outcome of the match, right? I mean, we saw that finally from Paul when they did merge the queues and they changed it from, instead of being able to take 12, they said 4. Here's the tonnage. I still think, by the way, and that's why I brought up with the podcast with Russ, is would you be willing to bring that down to 3 or 2? Because in my opinion, groups have too much control on the outcome, not tonnage. That can be, it doesn't matter what you do. Don't wait. Oh, okay, let's do weight class. No, it doesn't matter. You take 4 good players, the outcome of the match, if there's not an equally skilled team on the other side, they're gonna win. Like it just, and they can be goofing off and they're gonna win. So let's just say they make the change and say 8v8 solo, because I think that's sort of what you guys were saying, is the solo queue would become the solo queue again with 8v8, not 12v12.
We didn't necessarily say 8v8 solo queue. It's more just the 8v8
But
group
why
queue
wouldn't
was
you-
solo opt-in.
But why wouldn't you, like, if your argument is you had better gameplay and you saw a reduction in maybe player behavior, because I'm going to be very frank with anybody who's listening to this, if you're a high skill player, you generally actually are the ones rotating as well and doing the rotato. And I see this time after again. You fuckers are like the ones leading the charge in your Vulcans and all that, because you know flanking and maneuvering and putting that pressure, it works. It works, and that's why you do it. Why wouldn't you then say the same thing in solo and say if match quality improves in group, why wouldn't you go down to 8s in solo?
So part of that is from feedback.
Okay.
So when reading the couple of the MWO forum threads about kind of the big one's got like up to 400 and some odd replies. There were people that were like, "Don't take my 12v12 solo play away from me," kind of thing. So I would be solo queue has never really been the problem as far as matchmaking speed, like especially like during peak times. Off times,
Solo's fine.
I kind of
yeah.
So solo queue itself is fine. I don't think there really is a need to change it, but then providing somewhere for these for groups to go.
Okay, so you guys are more making the suggestion in groups because groups was having a population issue. You're saying instead of the 12s, go down to 8s because 1, the gameplay is better. 2, matchmaking is going to improve because you're able to take those 2. Okay, I get you there now. Okay, so
and I mean I kind of don't want to speak for other people on the panel. I don't know what the others' opinions are about group queue versus solo queue and 8v8 versus 12v12 as in that's right. Aside from the group queue 8v8, I think we talked about that one at length. I don't think that I might not have the right opinion, the everybody else's opinion on the solo queue side. Sure. I'm assuming that they do, but I might be wrong. Sure. And if that's the case, then
it changed something. Like it did change, but I also feel like I don't think it's the only thing it changed, and that's why I'm hesitant. I'm all for it. I'm not against it. Again, that's why I'm asking questions. I'm asking because I'm not the only one who asks questions. If I'm asking questions and I'm not sure, then there's going to be other people out there that not need to be convinced, but on some what is 8v8, and I the only reason I question 8v8 is versus 12v12 is if it's from a population and queue standpoint, okay, I get that the numbers wise, but if you're also reinvesting, your population goes up, then the group queue could go back to 12v12s as well, and it wouldn't be necessarily the problem. I feel like I just have to not see it to believe it, but I think a testing would be there. Why wouldn't you just sort of split? I think everyone would agree that having groups in the solo or having that merge queue was never good from the start. And it was always going to be a one-way show, and solos were just going to get hosed. And that is one of the balance mechanisms of solos is you don't have the necessary control of the outcome of the match. I mean, you're one of 24 people, or in this case, 12 on your team. You're expected to carry, expected to, you can pull off some amazing stuff. Also, you can be on Potatoville too. It can happen. But, okay, so 8v8 group queue gameplay, I guess I need to ask, why not reduce it down to 2-man groups?
You could certainly do two-man groups, but there is something to be said for people that wanna be able to play with their friends,
Ooh,
right? And that's where we kinda we run into a bit of a bit of a conflict, right? Like, certainly there's the, the ability to do matches and all that kinda stuff, but some people just wanna be able to group
but
up
then
with some friends,
you'd
right?
be sacrificing match quality because you are going to get raffle stomped by good players. And those good
Potentially, yeah.
players could then potentially rule the queue. And let's just theoretically say
Mhm.
228 is rolling out deep, Eon's rolling out deep, JGX, Ghost of Nox, all these groups out there. Sorry if I forgot you guys, RJF, all those guys. If you're out there in 8-man groups all sweaty, what is the reason I'm getting into this is what is 8v8 supposed to be? Could it be that, like, are you trying to create a competitive, and I don't mean like the comp queue per se for doing like worlds. I'm saying, but maybe you are to some extent. Is like, is this what we're basically wanting? Is it sweaty queue, which is no, if you know going into the group queue, you're going to need to bring your A game every single time, because that's sort of how it used to be. You'd roll around in fun builds and then, oh shit, we'd run into, whoever, SJR, and then SJR would run into some other group and then they would get also, like it was this
Mhm.
escalation, if you will. Is that what we're wanting? Or do you recognize and say group queue needs to also be accessible by the masses, and realizing that PSR can only do so much, especially in groups. Let's be honest, it's really not going to do anything for groups. Um, would you or should you make it to where it's only 2 or 3 man? Because when I listened to the podcast, you guys were like, well, just keep the 4-man groups, and I'm just thinking, Jesus Christ, you think 1/3 of the team is strong right now in solos. Now you're going to say 50% of the team is grouped. But what are your thoughts on that?
So in a game where in a game where skill is valued, in a certain sense, right? If you're good at the game, you have good game knowledge, then you're going to, like, you're going to get on top. Those people need to have an outlet. Now, I know that some people are going to say, "Oh, well, that's what comp queue is for." Comp queue is only active for like a month or two a year at most, and everything else is private lobbies and community-driven comp events and that kind of thing. So certainly, group queue would be hard mode in many ways, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Sure.
But what it would depend upon is it would depend upon an increasing population and people willing to go into group queue. PSR, if the matchmaker is able to able to average out PSR values for everybody in the group, and then and kind of balance it that way, that might address that. Might I don't really know the mechanics behind that too well, but like that could be a way to to wrap a matchmaker around group queue. But for anything related to group queue, be it 8v8, even going back up to 12v12 again, it's going to be dependent on the ability to have people play the game.
Sure.
If the game can't handle group queue, then we're going to go back to combined queue again. So one of the ideas that was suggested, because it kind of merges with something that Matt had mentioned, and Matt and I had talked about it on stream once, is the idea of an event queue. So rather than it just be locked into a typical thing, it's an event queue. Irby's with like plus 1,000% missile velocity, and everybody plays one kind of thing. Something that's silly and stupid and fun, right? For the sake of it being fun and weird. And then when they're not doing events in the event queue, it could just sit there and be either an idle queue, or they could just do it 8v8, or they could hide it, or something along those lines. So we don't,
Yeah.
I know there's always the fear about having multiple buckets,
Yeah.
right?
Buckets. Yeah.
But
Or I
if
mean,
it's 8v, here's the thing: if it's 8v8 with solo opt-in, and if we have the ability to queue in to both solo queue and group queue as a solo player, right? Then that will help to round that out. Now, there's some argument over how you would balance where
Sure.
a player
Yeah.
would go one way or the other,
Yeah.
right? That's getting into minutia that
Yeah.
I'm, you know,
Yeah.
that's we don't have to talk about at the moment. But as a concept, right, you could then have people queuing up for both solo and group.
Yeah.
That would fill in the blanks as far
Yeah.
as group queue is concerned. You'd
You
still
could
have a
also
healthy solo
you could
queue.
also just make it 8v8 and say 4-man groups. You have to have 4 people. Like you could do that, and then that way you never have to worry about solos. Solos can remain solos, and if you want to play in the group queue, just hop in with 4 of your buddies, or 3 of your buddies, and you'd be a 4-man and you roll deep. Like I said, I think it's interesting. I'm not for or against. I'm not. I don't like always giving my opinion because again, people always ask, but I feel like I want the discussion to come from yourself and others, and like I'll roll with whatever. I just want to bring up like I have concerns, like why is this better than another, and what about doing 2-man groups or 3-man group, so forth and so on. So I'm not sold on 8v8. Like as far as behavior, I can understand where they're coming from, but something did change when we went to 12s. But if you also remember, when we went to 12s, it was an instant rotation, and I feel like NASCAR comes it's player behavior, because when you jump into a tier 3 match, you just don't see it very often. You don't like that's the thing.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, and so like if it's player behavior, I just feel like how do you change the player behavior? Obviously, you have 8 more mechs on the field. You have more lights potentially as well. You have fast, and I feel like that's something that wasn't really discussed, which is mobility on certain chassis definitely was hit hard because of desync. But a lot of chassis are just fine right now, and obviously you see them being used, and so I feel like the game is just sped up, and also assaults aren't scary anymore to the extent, right? Lone direwolf, the spawn locations you guys got brought up, I think 100% everybody's calling for that to be fixed, but like I feel like the game is sped up as well, and so like it's I don't think the 12v12 necessarily started the rotation. I think it was a layer of it, just like the layer of better mechs have came out. LFEs came out, new weapons came out, some got nerfed, some, like laser vomit, being able to like hold a corner, or just all that. Everything has sort of shifted. I mean, so I feel like it's multiple things. And that's where I'm just not sold on the 8v8 necessarily being the end all be all, but I'm open to test it. I think that would be probably a good thing, right? And even if you were to say, hey, we're gonna go group queue and we're gonna go 8v8 for a month, and then we're gonna do, we're gonna look at the analytics, see what you guys think. Should we leave it or not? And if not, then you switch back to 12v12 and you do format, whatever it is. I mean, either or, it's worth testing, right?
Yeah, a more structured kind of test is needed rather than just a casual. Oh, we're turning this group queue into 8v8, and we're gonna watch things like that was the that was the extent of it, right? Whereas, with the soup queue, they got a little bit more consultation. There were some adjustments made to try to balance things out. Thinking again going the tonnage versus skill discussion, because I think they dropped the Lance tonnage down a little bit to try to stop the the super groups from going in. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, like something a little more structured. But like I said, like it could just be that we have a queue for special events, and sometimes that special event is 8v8 groups,
Sure.
right? That's the alternative, because then that queue can be used for other things. You could then queue up for both of them. People can do the silly things if they want. They can do the more serious gameplay and soup queue if they want. If they want to go really hard, they can go into faction play and drop over there, right? So it provides reasonable options, but the ability to queue up for multiple is a big part of that.
Sure. Well,
because that way you.
And that's what I was saying is like, even outside of if just 8v8 was where the events happen, or you could technically even do it in solo, but like, even if it wasn't as like crazy as like a Irby with doing 1,000 damage, but even if it was like, hey, we're doing, assault day, everybody, you got to take assaults, whatever it is, you can do that in all the queues. But I feel like I think you'd have buy-in right now. Like if you just flip the switch right now and said, "Hey, group Q's back, but you have to have a 4-man and it's 8v8." I think right now you'd have enough population to do that 24/7, and especially for players that maybe have gone away and or like that's the thing too is like even if I joke and I call out top players of you know exacerbating the issue, they don't like it. It's not fun. It's not challenging. They don't like to seal stomp. They would rather be in a more of a competitive environment where but I don't know. It'd be interesting, especially with like one. I wonder if this conversation from the podcast from Russ has, I don't know. I haven't looked on Steam like the analytics. Has there been an uptick in players? Would that uptick in players? And then, like I said, if you made it where you had to have 4, then it just solves your issue. You don't have to worry about 1, 2, 3. You don't. It just gets rid of it. It's simple. 4-man group. Go. It's and to be fair, you were around before when that was like that. Basically, granted, solos were still mixed in, but like there was multiple times where you'd run into SJR on one side, SJR on the other side, because they were rolling around multiple formats. And I do remember it being very competitive because like you knew like what you were getting into and you knew you had to bring your A game. And so like, I don't think there's anything wrong. You're min-maxing ahead of time because it's, so yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, so as far as like like attracting, like bringing the kind of the old players back with 8v8 group queue, it's important to point out that that change alone will only bring people back for a
Sure.
short amount of time on its own,
Yeah.
right? It needs to be coupled with other kind of important, you have 3 aspects, right? You got you're attracting new players, keeping new players, and bringing the old players back. Right, and you need to be able to satisfy all 3 of them in order to get your growing your population to grow again and to be stable.
Yeah.
8v8 would have bring people back, certainly for a short time. Long time, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But unless other things are changed alongside of it, it'll be that's a tough one, right?
Yeah, most definitely. Like, and that's why I feel like I said this in stream yesterday. I said it's almost like, I mean, everything you guys have on this doc is almost like a reverting, basically, the changes that have happened in 5 years. Really, that's what it is. I mean, if you net look at it, skill tree never really got iterated on, and so either we keep it or replace it, whatever that looks like. Mobility, side torso destruction. I mean, it's sort of what I was talking about with the mic, and it was reassuring to hear, and not like in a negative way. It was reassuring because that means me just being a regular Joe Schmo, thinking of ideas and then talking to Mike and talking to you and talking to other people in chat. There's multiple things that are aligning. The community can get behind. Was there anything that like you guys weren't really seeing eye to eye? Was there anything that popped up and you guys were like,
As far as like the conversation that we had, I mean, you're in that Discord, so we had talked a lot about
Sure.
a lot of this, before the stream. So there, it was certainly more of a sharing, a sharing exercise, but also soliciting feedback or watching the chat to see what the feedback is, and for the most part, everybody was pretty kind of receptive to it.
Sure.
We're trying to kind of make suggestions that were easy to, well, as far as what we're concerned are easy to implement, and stuff that would bring kind of the enjoyment back into the game.
Low hanging fruit versus stuff that might involve a little bit more time and effort,
Yeah.
Which you're open to. It's just you need to know what PGI is willing to do.
Yeah, because I mean, the way that I look at it, again, because I work in IT, I can see things. I can kind of have an appreciation as far as what PGI has to do in order to do this. They're ramping up a development team for MWO, so they need to get reacquainted with the code and with the game, and they're doing kind of their feature audit of the game. So start small and kind of you pile on the more complicated changes as you go, as you're getting reacquainted with it again. Being away from a game from a development aspect for 2 years, that's a long time
Yeah.
to not be thinking.
What do you think, like, if you can, I want to put you on the spot. If you could name one thing, like what is there any one thing that you've heard over and over and over what drove people away?
The game stopped being it was a reduction of fun. That's the easiest way to do it. The development kind of stagnated. Everything kind of, Rubelite was like the last custom map, or the last truly new map that was released. And that was a great map. And is a great map, and it's one of my favorites.
Yep.
Absolutely. But then that kind of stopped, right?
Yeah.
Like, and the development started to get a little bit anemic, but that's also because they were, shifting gears over to Mech 5. So there wasn't really as much kind of reason for it to bring players back, right? It was everybody knows what's going to happen. They're going to load into a match. It's gonna be one of the maps that they already know about. They're going to run around in circles, and whoever runs around in circles the slowest die.
Yeah.
And so that kind of, frustrating gameplay, and like kind of lack of new features and lack of variety. People don't want to play the same things over and over again, especially in a live service like this.
So basically what you're saying, it's when that 2 years ago, it was basically when everything went Mech 5, and we had small little chasing. Like, I don't know, how long has it been since we had the side torso destruction, but like, that's the unfunning. Like, I said this, no one asked for this. No one, like, I get where Chris is in a weird place of like balancing standard versus LFE versus XL. And to be fair, Bowser did bring that up, which I'm glad he did, because it is a problem per se, but I just feel like the way it went about it, no one wanted that. And like, I feel like that's this observable changes that we've had. And look, I'm guilty. Like, I was behind the quirks. Like, I did all the initial quirks up until Chris took over. I wanted to make changes that I'm sure that people would have disagreed with, but like, a lot of people say it like, hey, I really enjoyed that time, and that's awesome that you did, and I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. Hindsight's always 20/20 as well. But like engine desync, I was behind that. I definitely pushed that behind the scenes. But also, I'm not the one who did the numbers. That wasn't me. So it was one of those things where like, and I didn't like the fact of, well, shit, the Timmy, like, I've been like, why, like, why, like, just why, like, from
or Timberwolf,
Timby, from the Direwolf, all that, and you I think it really, something, that you just reiterated, which is like, it's not everything on this dock is if you were to put it on timeline, it's reverting a lot of the stuff. But then you've got a lot of like little things that I think are great for the quality of life, like the time of day stuff. Like, I get it. It's so, what it was? It was almost like, hey, we found this new cool toy. We're just going to put it on everything, like that's what it felt like. And no one like what, like, it didn't. Yeah.
I will say, like, it's some reversion, but it's also just some iterative improvement, right? Take the skill tree, for example. Sure. That one's more of an iterative improvement rather than reverting back to the requiring the three of a kind and all that kind of stuff. There's improvements that can be made to the skill tree there. Sure. There's improvements that can be made to Ghost Heat and the way that Ghost Heat works.
But you're pointing out a fault I think that a lot of people would be, is that's one of the issues PGI has always had, is the iteration. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah, it's the do something, then listen for feedback, and then make adjustments based on the feedback, rather than kind of washing their hands of it and calling it good.
Yeah.
Right. In a game like this, where you're introducing new chassis, new weapons, new maps, new play styles, all that kind of stuff, that kind of weapon balance should never be finished. You should always be adjusting. Like, if sure. I mentioned, I got a background in playing a lot of Dota 2. every year they released a massive update to Dota, which involved changing every single hero.
Yeah. And
and
it flips everything on the head though. And like some people
yep.
would hate that because change, but then on the flip side, like it always keeps things fresh. I felt that about like sort of quirks too, is like, you know, which you guys did cover rescale potentially. And again, that's another big thing for like PGI, because that has huge implications, just like that rolls, because everything ties into each other. Like that ties into quirks, that ties into mobility. I mean, if the mechs are smaller and they're harder to hit, you know, already, then they don't need as much, you know, because it's built in, right? And just all these things. But like, yeah, I think PSR is at one of the forefronts right now, because that's a good example of iteration. You know, so, July, Paul posted, hey, I'll give you guys an update in 3 months. We haven't seen anything. You guys talked about kickers, which I think is a good topic too, because a lot of people wouldn't really understand that. Is like, it just needs a little bit more tweaking. Like you guys are almost there. Just a little bit, just listen to the community a little bit more, have that discussion you guys did. And I feel like you've got a PSR system that's solid. And then, okay, hey, that's good. Check that off. Maybe, you know, a year from now, like if there's something up or whatever, I don't know, but yeah.
I hope that the involvement with the community related to the PSR work that was done is used as a blueprint for all future community involved projects as far as development in Mechwarrior Online. Piranha Games came to us and said, we want to do this. Here is the scope. This is our limitations. What are you able to do within these limitations to give us the best system possible?
Yeah.
Right. Then when you look at it, there was a lot of discussion, a really good discussion. There were some discussions that went way out of scope, but some lessons learned. You know, some really long and thoughtful posts by people who kind of, you know, do similar work in different fields, and, you know, really kind of, you know, getting you thinking again. Keep in mind, you know, again, the average age in Mechwarrior Online is pretty high, right?
Yeah.
So you got a lot of people that are professionals in their field that are able to provide some valuable information, whether it's directly relatable or not. That's beside the point. It gets you thinking.
Yeah.
Right. So when you look at the timeline, right? So we had that discussion. Paul said, okay, we're going to do these 4 options. And then Jay-Z said, hey, you know what? I've got a 5th option that's actually zero sum.
Yeah.
Everyone said, yes, let's go for Jay-Z's option. Paul said, okay, we're going with option number 5.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic example of how community involvement can really kind of spur development within MWO, as long as Piranha Games is willing. And on top of that, as long as they're able to give us clear boundaries to work within.
Sure. And also just being respectful to PGI. Like, and I feel like, look, you guys don't have to like them. You don't have to, but just like that's a key point. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're going to work with Darren, if you're going to work with Matt, like if you're just going to shit all over, like, oh, well, you guys should have done this and this is a commuter, but, you know, but it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to do anything. Like, you know, like you gotta, but, I like, you know, like I don't know. I haven't brought this up. I mean, other than the tweet I sent Russ at one time, but like, I don't think there'd be anything wrong with taking a panel like you guys and working with Darren and Matt directly. And I know some people may kick back and say, well, why should they get a say versus others or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I guess my point being is, if a panel like that could be done and it just simplifies things, egos put aside, egos checked aside, you're doing what you guys, you know, think is best for the community, and it aligns up with what Matt and Darren are looking at. Like, why wouldn't, and just to help sort of expedite stuff, because like I'm sure there's other little things out there, and those things you guys could listen to or even help. Like that's another thing too, is like maybe, just maybe, this shouldn't be a Darren and Matt, because it really isn't their, like, it's their job, but it's like to be able to say, let's just say 6 people like yourself and Ash and Jay and a few others, whoever it is, and like your job to the community now is to either add or subtract from the stock. Like maybe we did miss something that is low hanging fruit, quality of life. Like, oh, well, yeah, you're 100% right. Like, and when you guys were doing that podcast, you Ash was editing this live, and I thought that was good because it was like, oh yeah, we didn't, like, even though we've had all this discussion, we totally missed this point. Or oh yeah, that would that be something you'd be, not saying you specifically, but like, would you be open to that idea as far as like having a panel that basically helped Matt and Darren prioritize and work with?
Oh, absolutely. And it will, especially if it's a two-way street, especially if we're able to provide what the kind of the community requirements, or the community focus is, and if they're able to come back to us and say, well, this is where our focus wants to be, and maybe we can find some alignment and juggle some things around to
Sure.
to get some kind of agreement, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the key thing when you have like a this level of interaction between a developer and a community,
Yeah.
right? This isn't something that happens often, right? EVE Online is like the
Yeah.
only one that I can think of
Yeah.
that has
Well,
this kind of interaction,
there
right?
there
Like,
are
and then they have a
a
panel.
panel, yeah, but there are the CSM, but there are games out there that I think like do ask their and I don't mean this like top level players, not like how they should balance the game, but like, how do you feel about the like, whatever rifle or character, or, and I've always wanted that, like back when we I did the quirks, like I did work with some guys that were at that high level, but it was like so secretive and freaking NDAs and all. And I'm like, at this point I'm like, who the fuck cares? Like, no one cares. Like, just enough of it. And I will say what's been really cool is when I did that last podcast with Darren, the beard update, I asked him, I was like, it seems like basically what you're saying is if you and the community can come to a consensus, it's happening. There's no, and again, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not blaming anybody, but there's no one, like, you're doing what the community, yeah, okay, cool. I mean, that's what I got out of asking him, and I believe Darren. So like,
Yeah.
that's why I'm optimistic as well. Hopefully that doesn't, shoot me in the foot, but I don't think it will.
Well, what I hope comes out of that is, so if you look at what happened with faction play in in kind of the last kind of big push to change and update faction play, right? What started as community involvement, um it kind of turned on its head a little bit and became something else, because I think there might have been some misunderstanding between what the community was hoping for and what Piranha Games decided to do,
Yeah.
enough that they had to kind of make some later changes to try to address some of it.
Yeah.
If the community is treated as a partner in the process, just like with PSR, where we say we want your feedback on this. Here's the scope. We give them that feedback. And we have that two-way dialogue with that kind of stuff. If they're wanting us, kind of the community's feedback, then that's kind of I think the way forward that would work very well, and it would help to build some confidence again for those that maybe they don't have the confidence, or because
Sure.
of what's happened in the past.
100%. Yeah.
I'm forward think. I like to look forward, and I like to look backwards too much, but it's hard not to sometimes with some
Yeah.
of the things that have happened, and it's opportunities for lessons learned.
Yeah.
That's the way that I look at it.
Yeah.
And looking forward, if we're able to have that two-way dialogue and implement something that the community can get behind, then that's good. I certainly hope it doesn't turn into a casual versus competitive battle, which I know is kind of like a bit of a community fragmentation
Sure.
that's in there right now.
That's sort of why I was bringing up the 8v8. Like,
Yeah,
you've got a lot of people
like
that want group play, and I don't know, man, because like I said, it does sort itself out if you have a large population, but like, it's tough because like some people are like, you should want to improve in the game. They have that mentality. I get it. But who are you to dictate someone else's experience? Like, if they're just wanting to hop on or whatever, that is something that like I would be concerned with, is like the whole AV8. And if you were to say like, make it the sweaty queue, and they're like, man, you just ruined, like, I can't even drop with my 3 buddies because like we just get, it's like, well, then what are my other choices? Drop solo, go to faction play, and then faction play you're running into big groups as well. Like, And that's why I was asking, like, what is and would be the group queue? Is it supposed to be the competitive queue? Is it supposed to be the sweaty queue? Is it supposed to just be a groups but with balance? And the balance means recognizing that groups, the larger the size, has more influence on the outcome of the match. So if that's the case, you reduce that dramatically. I mean, MWO, for what it's been, has been the only free-to-play game in this genre that has ever let more than a 3-man group. Like, even when they're at 15 sides, World of Tanks, 15, 3-man group. World of Warships, I think 15, 3-man, or it might be smaller actually. But my point being is, like, they just don't allow it because, like, the outcome of the match would be just dictated right away.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it was Pandora's box when it was opened up. And I will kick back when someone says, I rightfully disagree with you, Nutty, that you have and should have the ability to play with your stream in an 8v8 if it means it puts the matches and match quality in jeopardy. But then also the flip side, you could say, well, I'm okay with this. And, you know, like, I think that's valid as well, right? So, like, how do you prioritize that? I don't envy anybody in that situation.
Like I said, that's a player pop issue, right? When I started streaming the game, and when I started playing group queue with people, and again of all skill levels, right? And there was a good year where I was just beyond terrible at the game, right? So I was certainly a lead weight for a lot of the groups that I played on, but you would run into like the big 228 groups and the JGXs and the Eons and the EMPs, but not very often, right? Back then it was, you know, the group queue was fun. Like it was a lot of fun. It was enjoyable. You had people, if it's in the case of something on stream, it's you're with a bunch of people, you're laughing and having a good time. If you're kind of getting a little more serious, you have that opportunity or have that option. But that's why I said like that's a really dependent on player pop.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. Like I said, I can see it. Was there anything that you wanted that didn't get in on this document? Was there anything, like, any idea or thought that you were like, I want this,
So the
but
one thing we kind of didn't talk about too much, and I know I raised it just at like the very end of like, oh, by the way, we kind of forgot to mention, you know, something that would bring some variety to the game in the form of, you know, maybe a new map or two, or um, maybe kind of a revised game mode or something along those lines to kind of break up the repetitiveness of what we have right now. Right? That's the biggest thing, right? Because when you're looking at injecting new life into the game, and you're trying to inject new life into a game, but you come in and everything is the same,
yeah.
right? That's a very difficult thing to do. So bringing more maps in, I think is a good idea, even to kind of um, have maps go in and out of rotation. I know like there were some comments in the Twitch chat of, oh, there's already a good number of maps and
Sure.
whatnot. And you know, on its surface, I kind of understand where they're coming from, right? There's a decent number of maps right now. But maybe it's you pull maps in and out of rotation. You know, we certainly talked about you know, like fixing up the spawns or even doing dynamic spawning. So you'll spawn somewhere on the map. um,
Yeah.
but that was kind of my biggest thing is wanting to, you know, inject new variety into the game, and that's, I mean, certainly the, you know, the event of an event queue has an opportunity for that, but really I think it's, you know, some kind of new map, some kind of new game mode.
Sure.
I think a new game mode is needed that's not incursion.
Remove incursion. I would be okay with removing incursion.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. Like, even to the example, like, you guys asked for Terra Therma back. I would argue, how about you put John in making a new Terra Therma? Okay, you can, or whatever, a new map. But my point being is, like, maybe Terra Therma is the first one, or let's just say the idea of the current Terra Therma that gets pulled out of rotation, and John actually makes a map theme, but you know, let's just say a better map. Because I feel like, what if they pulled maps out of rotation and then boom, it's, hey, this is the new version. I mean, that's my issue is like new maps are great, and especially if they're good, but we have a ton of maps. I agree, but a lot of them just, it's the same old, same old. I mean, like Crimson Strait, like isn't a bad map. It just needs some love. And like, why not? Like, what about pulling that out of rotation or keep it in rotation and then you just drop basically a new version after a patch or something? Like, I'd like to see that as well. Like, we have Caustic Valley or HPG, like all those maps that haven't had any iteration. Again, we're using that word. It just, hey, like, how about using John? Not to bring him up again. I'm just saying that because he made, or listening to the communication. Obviously, we know that Thad is also a level designer there. Having that discussion with Thad and John and saying, hey, these are the issues with Canyon Network, maybe from from a design standpoint, or from HPG again, how many are just have this central focus and rotation or corkscrewing or whatever, like, or the visibility is an issue. So pick a night or day or leave it or whatever, and make, again, night vision. You covered a lot of that, but I feel like, yeah, you're 100% right. Like, why not do that? As far as incursion, that thing can go. I do not like it. No one likes it. It's literally assault. Like, there's no.
If there was better AI in the game, what would be a lot of fun as a game mode is not VIP. Not saying VIP. I know whenever somebody hears AI and MWO, they're thinking VIP, but it's kind of similar. But instead to have it like a convoy defense as opposed to a mech defense. Kind of like some of the missions in the older Mechwarrior titles,
Sure,
where it's like convoy escort or something
sure.
like that. I realize that when you start talking about kind of PvE elements, it's like, is that really the place for in MWO? Probably not. I mean, certainly
Maybe in
PvE is
faction play.
Mechwarrior 5.
Maybe in faction
Yeah.
play, I could see it where, like, even if you did like some type of like battlefield rush where like it opened, I feel like incursion. That's sort of what it was supposed to be originally. Remember, it was like, yeah, like literally,
I mean, it's
oh, you take out this, it opens up more, and you got to fall, like, and then literally when it came out, I was like, what is this? Like, is this what? Like, I wasn't even told.
Steps.
Oh my god,
that's all it is.
It was so bad.
With extra steps.
I felt so bad. Like, I'm on the inside and I didn't even know. I was expecting asymmetrical, and we got the symmetrical, and it was like, what is this? And then and I think another issue that I don't know how you feel is like, the maps are designed and then the game modes are just dropped on it instead of game modes are designed and maps are designed around the game mode. And that's a huge part. I feel like we've never, certain maps do really well with certain game modes and certain maps don't. And they even recognize that with incursion, because not all maps have incursion. So I feel like that's something too, is like, like I have no problem with like map voting right now, because some maps just aren't as fun and people want to get whatever, but I totally get that. You wouldn't even need map voting if all the maps and game modes were, like there, like, so, even a skirmish, like one of the ideas I had for skirmish was that, okay, cool. It's my team versus your team, and there's no way to force the fight except to end it. Well, there's a lot of times what's so frustrating is like, not necessarily a light running, but generally speaking, what if you had the ability to go capture a sensor tower at the very beginning, or stuff like that, where then okay, we can wrap this up, or maybe that light goes and captures it, and then he can go, like a ninja and stuff. There's secondary objectives that can't finish necessarily match, but they help you necessarily obtain the victory or information that you need. And info warfare is a thing, even though some people don't want to admit it. So yeah. Yeah. All right, man. Well, go ahead.
I said another thing that we didn't really talk about is, I don't think so. And this is I think the reason why we didn't talk about it is because I don't think it's a low hanging fruit item. It would take probably considerable amount of development time, and that is changing the way that search works. in that when you search for a game, it doesn't lock you out of the rest of the UI. So while you're searching for a match, and say it's off peak, it's taking a few minutes, that you can sit around and you can play around in the mech lab and build out a mech or a skill tree or something along those lines. But and something like that would even kind of bring in the ability potentially of doing mech selection based on the map. Now there's concerns that I have with that.
Yep.
Around doing mech selection after a map has been chosen, because then you get like the people that are really skilled. They got the best mech for this map, and it's going to utterly destroy everything. So I have some concerns about that part. But just being able to still have the game client functional while search is happening, would be nice, but certainly not a low hanging fruit item. That would take probably a considerable effort.
I've thought a lot about it. I think at one point in time, I was on team, you should be able to select the mech based on the map. And the first argument is, well, then everybody will be min-maxed for it. Yeah, you will too. Yeah. You'd have the information so that there's not a problem. Like, for instance, and I give this example, what if you're on the new Frozen City? Maybe that close range Atlas isn't the best option, but you would know that, your enemy knows that, and you can select. The argument I could see now, and I'm sort of split, is that if the maps were just designed sort of like Rubelite, where you have long range, you have short range, you have medium, you have different verticalities to engage in, you have different ways to maneuver, and you don't need to know. Like, it fits. Like, you can put yourself in those positions. Certain maps just don't have that ability. So like, that's where, it's even if you could have like a 4 mechs or anyways, it does get a little weird, because, and then does it add to the match time, wait time? Like, oh, you get your map, you've got 60 seconds to pick. What if you don't pick? Does it just there's a lot of like factors there. But if the maps were just designed to where 1, 2, 3 play styles could, or happen. Again, going back to John, what he did with the Rubelite.
John, you got some work to do.
Yeah, like, so, and I feel like that just comes down to just like knowing how gameplay works, so yeah, there's that. I mean, even some people have said, heck, just make a snowy version of Rubelite or this, and it'd still be, anyways, yeah. But I'd rather like to see a different theme or a different map entirely. But there are a lot of maps that are already there. Like, even like Forest Colony, the old Forest Colony, it wasn't bad. And I would argue that we literally don't use 90, I don't know, maybe 65% of the new one, right? Like we still fight in the same areas. So
it feels like the new Forest Colony was really designed for faction scouting, because I remember doing faction scouting on the new Forest Colony, and it's like, this is great. You're all over the place. There's a ton of map for you to explore, and then when you jump in with quick play, it's everyone runs to runs down to H7.
Yeah, and so again, like that's where like, okay, well, you just want the map to be able to, okay, well, maybe we just need to go out a little bit wider, and we're like on Crimson or whatever, the one side of the mountain, just have 1 or 2 or 3, or same thing with like Solaris. I feel like Solaris is one of those where it was a miss. Like, they've just, it reminds me so much of the new Terra Therma, where you just have these huge huge things. There's no way to maneuver up there and like do strategies. There's no way to cross. You've got these just gigantic walls, and it takes you literally like 500 meters to run this way, or a click to run that way to maneuver, and it just funnels you in. And that's where I feel like a lot of the maps, like the whole funneling, that could be improved. And I don't think it would take a whole lot of effort as well. So in the grand scheme of things, but okay, so maps and I mean, how do you feel about new mechs and mech packs? I mean, because from what Russ was, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, from what Russ was saying, is like, I don't think it's out of like the reach to say that they're probably already thinking about it or designing one, or even have the next mechs already done or whatever. But how do you look at it? Like, does that interest you at all, or do you think it would interest the community at all?
I want a reason to spend money in the game again.
Okay.
I'm sitting on 536 mechs. 500 of those are unique chassis. I know you've got way more than I do because you've got like all of them, I think. But I want to have an excuse to spend money in the game because I want to support it. Um, I think being more deliberate with their mech pack choice is a good thing, but they need to change the way that they launch them. You can't have these AAA costs
Yeah,
associated with the mech pack anymore. It kind of goes into the big discussion that we had around monetization
sure,
during the stream, and even treating it like a live service. One idea that I've been floating in my head, and again, this is just me floating this idea in my head and nothing more, is why do we make, or why does PGI make rather, premium time as a burst purchase rather than as a subscription service, right? In today's world, where you look at a lot of live services, trying to get an optional subscription which will provide regular income,
sure,
for the company to keep the servers up and to provide value. And then there's other things that you can tack onto it,
sure.
right? But as kind of an example as to where someone like me can spend money,
Yeah. Well,
right?
I sort of
But
look at
that being said, I
premium.
mean,
I sort of look at premium time. 30 days is already a subscription to me. That's like, it's just you don't have an auto reoccurring just setup if you just did that. So I just don't have to worry about it again. Is that sort of what
yeah,
you're getting at?
kind of, yeah. 'Cause I mean, like I'm sitting on like 4.5 years of premium time between active and banked,
Yeah.
right? So I don't have to buy premium time for the length of this license renewal,
Yeah.
right? I
You
I
literally
I
don't
don't
have
I
to
don't
do anything. Yeah.
and I realize that I'm lucky because I've spent a lot of money on mech packs. Other people are certainly a bit more, they're struggling for it, but there's other, benefits that you can get to something along those lines. Is that the only way that they should do it? No.
Were they too
If they,
generous with premium time in the Mac box?
I think so.
Yeah.
But when you look at it objectively, and you look at, like, say, the skill tree where you talk about it, it's going to take you, like 1 or 2 months of hardcore playing to be able to skill up
Yeah.
those mechs, right? Then
You know what's
that's where the
Yeah, what's crazy is like if you Nutty, you're gonna buy this mech pack and spend hard money, or you're gonna buy a mech with MC and it doesn't come skilled. Like that blows my mind. Like,
Hmm?
granted, World of Tanks doesn't have anything for like hero tanks or whatever the equivalent would be, but it would be like if you're spending money, the whole idea about money is convenience, right? You're not grinding. So I can understand like that's one part of the equation, right? The Siebel, okay. But I just don't understand why it doesn't come with like 91 nodes unlocked, or like the ability like 91 SP, just like in the current system, like whether that gets changed or whatever. But that if you're spending money, actual money for a mech, it should just come with the SP. Like that's the whole idea, right? Like, and especially at the price point they're asking, because
Mhm.
like,
and, and now that GSP is a thing, and for those that don't know, yes, you can go to the gift store and MWO Mercs and you can buy a 200 GSP pack for $10, right? So that's now something that you can buy in the game. That's great, right? So you have that the purchase convenience. Um, the mech packs that they have, the existing mech packs that they have, if they want to stick to these omnibus kind of mech packs, right? They need to modernize them for the way that
yeah,
the game
most
looks
definitely.
today.
Yeah, yeah,
So they need to provide, if not enough to skill all of the mechs, maybe skill to be able to skill half of the mechs, or to be able to half skill all the mechs, right? Some to give them give people incentive to continue to play those
sure.
mechs, but also to give them a leg up on skill points,
Like if you were
right?
to use the cataphract pack or whatever, where it comes like 7 cataphracts, you'd have a standard that, hey, it's, you're buying the mechs, all right, but then you get like a better version that has all the skill points and that has better value. I don't know. Like I haven't spent I haven't purchased any mechs. I've spent $15 on premium time. Obviously, that was the benefits of having, being employed by them for X many years. But I spent 15 on the NGNG TV. Obviously, I know it's not the thousands of dollars other people. My point being though is that like,
I'm one of those.
right? Um, But my point being is like, you know, it was eye opening, you know, like starting a new account. And because I haven't been exposed to that, like it was just like, it was eye opening. It was like, oh, this is a real, like, I'm a good player. And it took me 50 matches to, you know, basically 91 nodes and get, you know, okay, moving on to the next mech, and I got to grind for C bills and stuff. I can't imagine what that's like for, you know, like, and then hearing you guys say, oh, it takes between 120 to X or whatever amount. It's like, and the value, it just surprised me that like the mechs itself, it's like, this comes with nothing else. Like, why is the executioner $30? Like, that's all you're literally is like, I don't know. I don't know.
Another way to think of it too is you go and buy a mech pack, and let's say you buy an ultimate pack, so you're spending $70 US. You know, you've got upwards of 8 mechs depending on the mech pack. How many of those variants do you actually play? And be honest, right? For example, when I bought the Mad Cat Ultimate Pack, I play the Death Strike, I play the Bee. And before we were able to use the Death Strike in competitive play, I played the 1. All of those other Mad Cats
Yeah.
just sit there.
I feel like
Right.
that's a fault from the very beginning of Mechwarrior Online, where it didn't the monetization of mech packs. It worked back then, and it worked up until I wouldn't even say until recently. Obviously, 2 years ago, I would say it started showing issues very early on. And if you notice, there was a change. There was a shift in mechs where instead of like 5, we started getting 6, 7, 8, and the chassis bloat that we had, and how many variants were exactly the same. Basically, it was like, oh well, one has 3 missile and 2 energy, but this one has 3 energy and 2 missile, or like where literally some of them would have the exact same hardpoint numbers, just different.
Different locations, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, would you? This may cause some. It's just a question. Would you be opposed to removing mechs?
The only way that I can see the only way that removing mechs would be viable is if it was an engine change and a new game.
Ah, yes. Okay.
And I'm on like that whole kind of engine change discussion.
Sure.
I'm not happy with the state of the game at the moment, so I don't want to wait for 2+ years of development for a new game on a new engine. That's so
I think they should do it in conjunction. I think they should already be working on networking, either for Mech 5 Online or Mechwarrior 2, Mechwarrior Online 2.0, and it's a new game.
I mean, if they're able to do that, but I'm operating under the assumption that we have to choose either or.
Oh no.
So if we're choosing either or, then that's like, you know what, let's develop the game we have.
I think Russ.
But if they're going to do both, then
I think no. I think they. It's, to me, it blows my mind. Mechwarrior Online has been hugely successful for Piranha Games. Hugely, like Russ, like you literally funded Mech 5 because of it. It's I don't know. It's made them successful as far as where they are right now. They've been able to develop. I mean, we've been playing this game for 8. So let's just say it's funded everything for the past 10 years. I just don't understand why you wouldn't say that is a priority. Yes, we're going to dump resources into keep MWO, keep going. And then boom, here's Mechwarrior Online 2, whatever you call it, Mechwarrior Online Renaissance. I don't know, whatever. And it's a complete. Now, I will say this, and I've asked multiple people. I want to ask you first. If we were to get a new version of Mechwarrior Online, should you expect everything you have on your current account?
No. It's a new game. It has the potential of being a very different game. There's no way, I don't think, that they would launch the game with all of the chassis that are currently present in the game. They would probably roll them out over time. They would build up. Now, that just because I'm saying that doesn't mean that I think that we should be just given nothing. There should probably be some kind of acknowledgement, some kind of kickback. Because the game's been out for 8 years. We've gotten our value as players, I think, and I mean, I can really only speak for myself, but I've gotten significant value out of the money that I've spent in the game.
Yeah.
Um, to move to an actual full MW02 as opposed to upgrading and doing an engine upgrade, which I know is like, just an internal engine upgrade and keeping everything the same. I know that's a very difficult proposition,
Yeah.
but for them to release a brand new MWO style game, yeah, like that's I don't expect to bring all my chassis over. I really don't.
Yeah.
I would expect an amount of C bills, perhaps. If they're going to maintain like the kind of the status quo of C bills, MC, premium time, and GSP, certainly, stuff in that format,
Yeah.
to a degree.
It'd be
Maybe,
interesting, right? Because there's a lot of assumptions, right? Of like, what would that be? Would it just be
yeah,
basically take what maybe the next 2 years here, what they do, and say, okay, yeah, we've got a new updated monetization model. We're gonna bring that over. Oh, okay, we got that. To me, though, if they were to do an online, like, I expect more as well. Like, I don't want just ported over mechs like we do and have an mech 5, if I'm honest. I want better animations. I want better sense of like obviously map design, game modes, all that fun stuff. Again, it really just depends, but like, just because they make a new game, I just question out there too, to a lot of people, it doesn't mean it has to be MWO. It may not even be free to play. That's why I brought up Mech 5 online. Like, they could just basically say, hey, you have to buy Mech 5 or a DLC, but you have to have the base product, whatever. They could do a lot of things. But what if it was a lot more like Mechwarrior 4, where they're like, you guys run whatever league, like, you get to say, here's the mech, like, here's the mech lab, here's the base systems, but like, I don't know, like, the sky's the limit. I think there's just a lot of assumptions out there. I know there will be people raging and say, no, I should have every single
give me all
mech.
my things.
Yeah, it's like, what if
Give
the
me all
game
my
doesn't even
things.
look like that? Like, what does it operate? But even if they were to do an MW 2.0 and they were saying, hey guys, we're launching this, we're going to continue the free to play, again, because it's already worked out, but we're updating them to battle pass, whatever you want to call it. We're going to do better on releasing mechs in a better, like, when we need it from a gameplay perspective, like we need this type of, whatever, a mech. But hey, you know what? You support it, your founder, you're going to get this cool skins. You're going to get this cool, mech pack because you support us. Oh, and hey, you know what? You spent money supporting us throughout these years. Here's a supplemental thing just for you. You're going to be able to rock out there. And all those other players that weren't a part of that or, didn't, you're going to have something to show for it because you got, like, I'm not saying gold mechs, but my point being is like, that would be funny.
Something.
Like give everybody
that
gold
would be
mechs for
hilarious.
founders. Like,
but even if it's like a selection of mechs, like,
sure.
right, like not getting your entire mech lab back.
Yeah.
Right. Not getting all of your mech bays refilled again, but just like, what you've been, whether or not it's based on value or time spent in the game, probably more time spent in the game than anything else. Unless they've kept the documentation around the actual how much money people have spent. That would kind of gatekeep things in a way that I think might be a bit awkward.
I think just fair,
but,
just to be like, hey, you support us, and it's just a blanket, like, yeah, I get what you're,
yeah. So certainly an acknowledgement, but yeah, I don't expect to load into any kind of, hypothetical MW02 and seeing 531 chassis and
I think
all
they
the
should do
premium
it.
time and all that kind of stuff.
I think they should do both. I think they should take, I mean, again, I know Russ, he basically was saying is like, well, it's going to take, I don't think it'll take 2 years, but go ahead, start. Like, if they haven't even started, maybe they have started. I think it's a no-brainer, and it's, I wouldn't say it's stupid, but like, looking at the success of Mechwarrior Online, like, okay, let's play this ball game. Let's say it takes 2 years. That's still 3 years of a brand new product that will be obviously kicking, because a lot of people will come back and they're like, hey, updated engine, you've already revamped, like, I don't know.
And even then, it's still just because it's, the license extension, and this isn't the first license extension that they've received, if my memory serves me correctly.
second, if not third. I think it's their second one, right? Yeah, I think it's the second one, if not third.
So I mean, as long and I mean, I've dealt with Microsoft in an enterprise capacity. As long as they can keep Microsoft happy,
Microsoft isn't
they
touching
just
the
won't.
IP. No one,
Yeah, they just
yeah,
don't. No one else is going to develop for us. So it's like, you know what? We'll let you have it and
yeah.
keep going. So I don't think that would be the end. I don't think 4.5 years from now, 5 years from now is going to be the end. I don't.
Or they do just basically bring everything. It's literally just an upgraded engine. They could do that. They take everything you have right now and stuff like that. They could do that. They could get, again, depending on how the game does in the next year and a half, 2 years, depending on how successful this, this change of direction is for them working with the community. Like if it's super successful, be like, hey, yeah, we made it. Look, we're doing it, and it's just going to be an update, like a visual update and a systems update. We're going to get new UI, but you have everything. Like, whatever you have, and we're not taking that away, and we're just going to add stuff to that. I think that's an option too. And I could see that argument is if Mechwarrior Online is able to boost back up there, and they could potentially, especially if the model isn't tied into mech packs anymore. If the again, success financially is happening, then why not just continue doing that? So there's that as well, right?
No, I can certainly see I can certainly see it there as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, one way or the other, I mean, I'd love to see a new engine. I really would. I'd be happy, even if it's a newer version of CryEngine, right? So it's just something that's better.
They do have
But
a few versions. Yeah.
But UE would be certainly better, at least from an efficiency point of view, because now you're not essentially running two engine teams. You've got UE4.
Yeah.
You have two games that run on UE4.
Well, it's funny. He did mention potentially improving the client performance, and it made me just like, wouldn't you have already done that before if you could have? But then it popped in my head is maybe what he's talking about is actually upgrading CryEngine to, because they obviously didn't continue licensing or whatever. Maybe they do just like bite that bullet or whatever, and then we get stuff like DLSS and stuff, the newer technology that happens, and then they, depending on So there is that possibility as well. So just from a modern like update to the engine, but man, all right. Well, I feel like I've picked your brain enough. I don't even. What are we? Oh yeah, we're over 2 hours already. That happens. I could probably
no big deal.
Yeah, I could probably just keep going, but you've got a stream to get to. So I guess you're excited. You've mentioned your concerns, but I think from me listening to you it's outweighed by the positives. Really, again, it comes down to the ball is in PGI's court. It's in Matt and Darren's hands. Yeah, man, thank you for answering all the questions I had and giving input. Like, I don't know if I have anything else for you other than, like, what's your favorite mech?
What's my favorite mech, and why is it a Hellbringer?
Hellbringer.
Come on, again.
Do you have a favorite IS mech?
Just to remember, I've got my Hellbringer sitting right here.
Yeah. What's your favorite IS mech?
I don't play a lot of IS
dead
mechs.
One? Were you about to say a dead one?
Maybe. I mean, it's funny. It's like what I'm thinking, like what mechs that I'm playing in competitive right now, it's the Summoner, and that's about it.
Okay.
But no, it's now you got me racking my brain. I'll say the Assassin just because Mark did really good work with it. By the way, there's an Easter egg on the Assassin for those that don't know.
Gotcha. All right. Things. Oh, the Assassin Vulcan. How similar they are, and how they came into MWO and been wrecking havoc. Assassin not so much anymore, but still, dang. Now everyone's gone to the Vulcan. Is there any mech that you'd like to see in MWO?
So, I know Piranha Games is going to laugh at me for this, and they're going to say no way, but I would love to see a Sunder.
Oh, okay.
In the game, I would love to see an IS Omni.
IS Omni. Okay. All right. All right. That would be interesting. I feel like that goes back to the whole discussion of engine balance as far as XL, because a lot of IS mechs come equipped with XLs, and
You'll just maybe just
yeah,
make an exception.
I don't know.
Lore light is what I always
More
think
like,
about
yeah, no,
whenever I
yeah,
talk about MWO, right?
yeah. I feel like though that's again, that's a good question to have as far as like, should that be a translation from tabletop? Like, is there other ways to go about it? But then how do you do it in a way that also benefits the standard engine? Like where a standard build, and maybe you treat ISXLs just like clan, but it's more of a severe penalty. I don't know, like movement heat
Or
pen, or like, I don't know.
if it's possible to treat Omni IS XLs the way that Clan XLs are
Hmm.
treated.
It's yeah, it's tough because I mean, in reality, BattleTech, if you read the lore, they're just straight upgrades. There's no detriment. It's the cost and manufacturing process and availability. Like, it's supply and demand.
Yeah.
Like, Pharaoh does not take up 14 crits on a Timberwolf in the novels. There's no such thing. It's just a better armor package, right? That needs to be designed up in space because of whatever. Like, that, my point being is, like, that's what's always so funny about a game where you have these systems and it has to be balanced because of PvP. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, I like that answer. So IS Omnis and the Sunder in particular, which was a Mechwarrior 3 introduction, because that was okay. All right, all right. Well, dude, I just want to say thank you for being on the podcast. What is your streaming schedule like, and where can people find you?
All right. So I actually just updated my schedule. So I am live on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Friday night, which is a very special night, Saturday at various times of the day, and on Sunday on my Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday streams. It's at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And then on the weekends, it really depends on work commitments and life commitments. But it is at twitch.tv/NuttyRat. Make sure you especially tune in on Friday night for MWO After Dark, which is where we like to have a lot of fun.
Oh, shit. I have a question for you. And
Sure.
this is from Chion, and he asks, what is your favorite After Dark streaming whiskey?
My favorite. Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, it'd have to be. Well, so specifically the After Dark streaming with. Okay, so because After Dark, you generally you don't get a chance to enjoy quite as much. So the standard is Jameson,
Okay.
or Crown Royal Northern Harvest, which is one of the whiskeys that won Best Whiskey. It's Canadian whiskey, of course. For something a little more refined, a Lefroy Quarter Cask, which if you like real peaty scotches, then that's kind of definitely definitely one to go for. As far as like highbrow scotches, you're looking at the Lefroy 25 year, which is a real treat. And the other one's a Japanese whiskey called Nika. Those
You're
are kind of like
so over
my
my
mainstays.
expertise. I know nothing. I think we've talked about this before. Yeah, we have on stream. Like, I'm
We have.
I'm
That
such
was
a
the
noob.
drunk night, I think.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that stream. That was a
Yeah.
glorious stream.
Yeah, but I tend to prefer scotches from the Isla region. So the peaty, the very peaty, smoky style scotches. Highlands as well, which is kind of where a lot of that's when you get like the Glenlivets and the Glenfiddiches of the world. That's where a lot of people kind of start in Highland scotches, but in Spaceside's okay.
Gotcha.
But
awesome. Well,
thanks for having me.
There you go. There you go, Chion. There's your answer. It wasn't just
All the
one whiskey,
scotch.
it was all of them. I think that should be the appropriate answer. Which one? All of them. I think
all of them. Yes.
All of them. But yeah, man, thank you for being on. Like I said, I've been wanting to pick your brain. And of course, for people that don't know you, I have a blast watching your stream. I think you have a blast in your stream, and the Friday nights are quite entertaining, especially because alcohol's involved. So if you haven't, make sure to go check him out. Is there any last moment? Is there anything you'd like to tell everybody out there? Is there, whether it's MWO or life or what? Is there any last moments from NuttyRat? Last words.
If anything, it's more of a thank you to you, and also Darren for supporting us streamers over the years. It's been absolutely a treat to be able to even to come on the podcast here and hang out with you, and the times that we've dropped together, and times in the past where it's been like kind of ribbing after each other. The big streamer pile at the last MechCon,
which wasn't my idea either. Like I was a victim. Yeah,
you just jumped on top of everybody and just kept going.
Well, I mean, you make it easy, man. Like I said, it's I'm glad you've stuck around. It's unfortunately we have lost a lot of streamers. That's one thing I was just talking to Darren about. Like we've there's definitely, maybe they'll come back. So I'm hoping, I'm optimistic. I miss a lot of their faces, and I think the community is less off because of it. So hopefully some of those, again, send PGI's court. So thank you for being on. And of course, for everybody out there, I'll have all of his information down below. So if you head over, give him a follow. He's also on Twitter. I'll have that down below. But yeah, thank you again for being on, man. And are you streaming around after this? Is that what or is it a little late?
It's a little late, but that's okay. That's okay. So I'll be, my next stream won't be till Friday night.
All right. Sounds good, man. Well, thank you again for being on, and take care.
Have a wonderful night.
All right, guys, that's going to be it for this. But before we get off here, I just want to ask you, did you enjoy this podcast? If so, make sure to click that like, leave a comment down below. It helps the YouTube algorithm and all the mumbo jumbo behind the scenes. But also, this podcast is supported by viewers like you. If you enjoy this podcast, if you enjoy what I do on my Twitch streams, which, by the way, is Monday through Friday, 12 to 6 p.m. Eastern, make sure to head on over at twitch.tv/NGNGTV. I'll have that link down below, but consider subscribing on Twitch or becoming one of my patrons. Again, this is my full-time gig. You guys are my sponsors. And speaking of sponsor, maybe you want to sponsor a podcast. Do you want advertisement for a unit or maybe a product? Let me know. And of course, same thing with the stream. Maybe you want to sponsor an entire stream like Ghost of Nox just did last week. Reach out and let me know, and we can talk. And of course, if you shop on Amazon, I do have an affiliate link, associate link. I think it's now technically called. Either way, I'm going to have a link down below. So if you're buying stuff for friends, family, holidays, or just a gift for yourself because you deserve it, consider using my link below. Just want to say thank you again for listening. This was a fantastic conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. This was your local No Guts, No Galaxy Mechwarrior podcast. Signing off for tonight. This is Phil.